We're just a handful of days away from the Buffalo Bills actually playing a preseason game. This summer has just went by too damn quick. What is going on, everybody? How you doing? Welcome to another episode of Talking Buffalo, part of the Blue Wire Network. Thank you, as always, for locking in, whether you're watching this on YouTube, whether you're listening to this on Apple or Spotify, wherever you listen to podcasts. I appreciate you all. Like I said, the Buffalo Bills have a game this coming Saturday afternoon. We're going to talk today. I've been to 4 camp practices over the last week and a half, and we're going to talk about a handful of concerns that I have based on what I saw anyway. You're listening to this on Wednesday, which means, as always, throughout this summer, I am joined by my good friend Anthony Marino from Breaking Buffalo Rumblings, part of the Buffalo Rumblings podcast, Vidcast Network. What's going on, buddy? How you doing?
Good, man. How are you?
Pretty good. Pretty good. We've talked about this before. I'm trying to balance summer slipping away versus the excitement of a football season finally starting. You know, we go through the draft season or free agent season, then we go through draft season and minicamp season. Practices are going on now. It's all the lead up to what we're about to get into. So that's always fun. But God, man, I can't believe we're in the second week of August already. It just blows my mind how fast it goes by here in Buffalo.
And you know what? And you don't want to wish summer away. And I don't know if you were like this with your kids when they were younger. It's like you get to a certain part of the summer, though, where you always say, like, all right, you guys are ready. You guys are ready to go back to school.
Yeah.
Right. Get back to practice. Get back to, just a regular type of schedule. Like, y'all are ready. And we're just about that point here in our household. So you can relate. But again, you don't want to wish the summer away. But personally, fall is the best time of year for me. Maybe it's because of football season. Just the weather is perfect in upstate New York. But I'm with you, man. It's going too quick.
Yeah, especially if you got kids. And I suppose even if you don't, you kind of make plans for the summer when school's over. And by this point, you've kind of done what you're going to do with the kids for the most part anyway, in terms of like a summer vacation or just activities that are going on. Yeah, I'm ready. Listen, I'm ready for football. We'll be talking, like I said, today's primary topic is going to be 5 biggest Bills camp concerns based on what I've seen over the 4 practices that I've been to recently. And I'll get your opinions on them as well. Real quick, before we get going, so we're, again, and I always have to preface this when Anthony and I do this show, we're taping this early Tuesday morning. So this will be on, if you're watching this on YouTube, it usually premieres sometime on Tuesday night, and then the audio version will drop Wednesday. I always feel like I need to put that out there just in case something goes down, that we were not talking about today. It's because it happened after we recorded the show. But anyway, so I logged into Twitter this morning. That's always one of the first things I do. I don't know about you. Like, once you get up in the morning, how long before you check Twitter for that first time?
Oh God, Pat, it's embarrassing to say. I mean, it's like within a minute, right? I mean, it's just, you have kind of this rotation, like you peek at Facebook quick, you peek at Twitter quick. It's way too soon in the day to start.
It is. And same for me too. I literally wake up, turn my alarm off. You grab your phone, you see if you got any notifications on it, and then, I open up Facebook real quick, and then I'll open up Twitter real quick. Anyway, I open up Twitter this Tuesday morning, and literally the first thing that I saw was, an anniversary, 14 years. It said, and it's got that X now instead of the tweet, the bird tweeter, but whatever. It says, you joined 14 years ago today, share the big day with others in your X community. God, they refuse to even call it Twitter anymore. Anyway, man, 14 years ago, I joined. How long you been on Twitter for?
Yeah, it's probably been about the same. I'm trying to think when my last Twitter anniversary was, or whatever it may have been, but it just like, let's put it this way. It's been over 12 years.
Yeah.
When you look at that part, and it just, it's a weird addiction that comes with that site, man.
Hey, man, I agree. And a lot of bad shit goes on Twitter. But I will say, there's a reason why I've been on it for 14 years. It's hard to remember having to do the old fashioned way, which I guess in today's world, the old fashioned way is actually going out of like ESPN or some kind of website to find up to the minute sports news or pop culture news. Where on Twitter, something happens and you find out instantaneously right away. But yeah, man, it feels like forever ago where you had to go on websites to find out news, or even worse, have to wait for the news to come on your, TV or ESPN on TV or something like that. It's just crazy how much this world's changing. Yeah, 14 years, man. It's been a while.
But when you think about it too, though, right? It's like, and we can talk about the bad parts. There is a lot of good,
Sure.
and I say that, and like, listen, I live in Albany, New York, right?
Hmm.
So especially when the Bills were horrible, like there was no Buffalo Bills coverage. So if it wasn't for Twitter, you don't start to interact with people like Brian Galliford and Matt Warren and Del Reed and yourself and Bruce and Joe Marino and Joe Miller, Jay Spence, like all these folks that kind of just become a part
Sure.
of this fandom with you. That then all of a sudden you go from I am starving for any content on the Buffalo Bills I can find to there's just an abundance of it, and it's
Yeah.
there whenever you want it, and it's there is plenty of good.
Yeah, there is for sure. And you make good connections on so not just Twitter, all of social media, but primarily because we use Twitter so much. I've made some great friends because of Twitter. I've been able to promote and get content out because of Twitter. You don't live in Buffalo. I didn't live in Buffalo for 5 years. I
Yeah.
started the first 3 years of this podcast. I actually wasn't even in Buffalo. I lived in Florida. So Twitter has always served a lot of purposes. It's kind of wild to me when I think back, and now I've been on it for 14 years, back all the way in 2009. I guess that's cool. Anyway, one other thing too, before we jump into today's Bills topic, we talked about this a little bit last week because Joe Marino and I were watching Bills practice. I know we talked about him a little bit last week. Since we taped last week, last Thursday night, I had Joe at Imperial Pizza for our Live from Imperial series. I got to tell you, dude, and I know I say this kind of often when I have a good guest on, and then I talk about it afterwards. Man, I've been doing this for a while. I've been doing a bunch of these live shows. I've had a lot of good guests on. Joe Marino from Locked On Bills, of course. I'm talking about the host here podcast. So it's an excellent one. He's right up there, dude, with my favorites that I've ever had on this show. And we talked about it a little bit last week. I told you how we were at Bill's practice and how it was kind of weird, not weird, but just people were coming up to Joe saying, "Hey, I'm
Yeah.
a big fan," and getting pictures. I got to tell you, so when you watch these streams, and if hopefully guys out there watching and listening, you at least check out some of them. It's pretty cool to have that vibe and Imperial, that live vibe sitting down. You can see some of it on camera, but some stuff you don't see on camera. And one of them last Thursday was this is a popular dude. There were a lot of people there, specifically, as much as I'd like to think that they were there to see me, they're not. They were there to see Joe. People brought copies of his book, which, by the way, I got one behind me there. If you're watching a video, his Go Bills book. But anyway, they just want to meet him, hang out, get a selfie. Just tell him how people were telling him how good of a job he does. There was one family that drove from Angola to see the show just to meet him. It was pretty wild to see. I've had Stevie Johnson and John Feen on recently, and I got to tell you, Joe was probably as popular amongst fans at Imperial that night as any of those football players were. It's really cool to see, man. Really cool.
Joe, there's an approachability to him, right? And even when you talk about someone like Fina or Stevie Johnson, maybe you feel a little struck, right? Like if you're
Hmm.
engaging with a celebrity. But Joe, and I think it's like there's so many folks that fall into that same type of category, like Sal Capaccio, like
Yeah.
Matt Perino and Ryan Talbot when they do their stuff, that you feel like these folks, right? Just from listening to their shows and kind of engaging with them and these communities. And Joe has truly established himself as that guy. But it must have been fun to, it's one thing we talk about it or you see it from the engagement online, and another thing to be with him in person and actually see it up close in person.
Yeah, for sure. And look, with all due respect to Sal and Matt and Tim and Tyler and a lot of these great writers, there's always people there that are eager and excited to meet them too. And they're very recognizable faces. And I feel like maybe it's because they're around more that people are just
Sure.
used to them being around. Joe living in North Carolina, coming up here for the week. I don't know, dude. It was just it was. I don't say it was weird because it's well earned. It was just a different level of people wanting to meet somebody that was on the show than I had seen before. And it was kind of wild. And his brother, David, I want to throw a shout out to him as well. He was there. I thought he lived in Buffalo, and I thought maybe Joe was coming back in part to see him. Found out his brother actually lives in Dubai.
Oh,
I was like,
geez.
that's wild. I didn't ask him why. I'm assuming it's military related, service related, but yeah, I didn't know that. So that's pretty cool too. Another cool aspect for Joe, besides being able to come to Buffalo and and watch some practices firsthand and go out and eat. And he was doing the whole chicken wing thing. I think he had like 9 or 10 places in a week. He was doing 2 days, but it's also pretty cool because he gets to spend some time with his brother. So anyway, really cool stuff. One other thing too, this past week, can't take this for granted when you get to be 98 years old, but happy birthday, Marv Levy, 98 years old. By the way, I have if you're watching this on the YouTube side, I got this a long time ago, man. This bobblehead, it's a Kodak Marv
Okay.
Levy bobblehead. Um, Part of my small collection here that I have in my studio with Jim Kelly and Fred Samarillis. I don't know how you can see them back there, but those things are old, man. They got to be 25, 30 years old. Those bobbleheads, really cool. But yeah, dude, Marv's still kicking at 98. Good for him.
And it was great to see just, he's still got that wit to him, that sense of humor when they were singing happy birthday to him at the Hall of Fame dinner. And
Yeah.
then like, and you're all invited back for my 200th birthday. It's just, I mean, to still kind of have that sense of humor at 98. Happy birthday to Mark.
Yeah, absolutely, man. All right, so let's get down to business today. Like I said, I have five, we'll call it five biggest Bills camp concerns. These are things that it's a combination that I've seen with my own eyes through being at practice 4 times. And also, look, there's a handful of people who put out content that I follow pretty much daily during training camp, whether it's written articles, whether it's vidcasts, podcasts, whatever it be. So based on kind of what other people are talking about as well, in addition to what I've seen, I got 5 of them. No, necessarily not, not 1 to 5 or 5 to 1, kind of a little bit random. And I'm going to admit something right off the top here. This first one, admittedly, is a little bit weak. I struggled to come up with 5, which maybe that's a good thing if you're certainly a Bills fan. It is. This is what I wrote down. I said no one unexpectedly has really stood out at camp, and I also wrote down 6 players for an example. And it's not that these guys have looked bad. It's that these were guys that I was really locked in on and hoping to see a little bit more of. And look, this is just practice, so let's throw that out there. Sometimes you get a lot of false impressions based on practice. When the games start, things can and will change. But these are 6 guys that, like I said, I was hoping to see a little bit more from during camp. I got Connor McGovern, Damian Harris, Khalil Shakir, and I'll talk a little bit about why. Boogie Basham, Braylon Spector, and one of the new receivers, Deontay Hardy. And look, that's not to say any of these guys have been terrible, not by any means. But like I was really hoping in camp. Sometimes you get those training camp darlings, whether it's some unheralded prospect, some undrafted guy that just wows you in training camp. I mean,
Right.
ultimately, it usually doesn't amount to much. But I haven't seen any of that at camp. And the guys that I just mentioned, I don't know. I haven't seen anything from them that really stands out. I've seen some inconsistency with a couple of these guys. Like for an example, Khalil Shakir, who, by the way, like it or not, fans, I'm pretty confident in saying when the Bills start the season in 3 wide receiver sets, if it's not Kincaid out there with 2 tight ends, I think Khalil Shakir is your starting slot guy. He's taken pretty much every number 1 rep with the 3 receiver unit out there throughout camp. He looks great one practice, and then he has a couple drops. It just not a great blocker, and you see that too. So I don't know, Joe. I just again, admittedly, my week 1 of these 5 here, no one unexpectedly has really stood out at camp for me.
And you talk about it in the first name on your list, Connor McGovern, right? And I think that's an interesting one because we knew the Bills needed to do something at right guard. They do that in free agency. That's kind of like their one big signing that they make, right, in March. And it's just, wait, is it the Jets Connor McGovern? Oh no, it's the Cowboys Connor McGovern. Like nothing that you came away with like any sort of a, yes, we got Connor McGovern type of piece. But I don't know. It's like, well, how much are we going to see from a guard in training camp as well? And I wasn't there. You were. But I tend to agree, right? Because then you start to hear little things. Well, it's like, well, hey, if he's struggling, I mean, if you've got Torrance and you've got Bates, like, well, and then you've got Edwards too, by all stretch, seems to be playing well. It's like, don't play the guy just because of his contract, but you just would like to have a little bit of faith in the front office that if you're given a 3-year, $20 million contract to a guard, that he's going to live up to that.
Yeah, look, I'm not saying, and again, Joe Marino and I talked about it. And Joe, by the way, is the one. So on last week's show that we did from Imperial, I asked him near the end of the show. I said, because we spent a lot of time talking up players and good things we saw. I said, give me one or two guys where you're not necessarily disappointing, but you've been left wanting them to see a little bit more. And that was the first guy that Joe mentioned. Let's be clear, he's starting at left guard. Okay, the period, end of story. He is your week one starter. He hasn't looked terrible, and I admittedly am not some offensive line guru who can dissect techniques and how they're looking at practice. But I will say we've read and you saw a lot of the defense looked really good. Josh was under siege at practice. He would have been sacked a lot if it was live. Well, if the defensive line's getting to the quarterback, that means they're beating people, right?
Yeah.
And he's been one of them. So anyway, a little bit disappointed with what I've seen. The book on him is he's a good, really good pass protector and a pretty poor run blocker. We'll see when the games start. Again, this is just training camp. Let me hammer that home. Damian Harris, nothing against him. He looks all right. I personally like Latavius Murray better. Latavius Murray, by the way, big running back in person. You got to kind of see him in person, appreciate how much bigger he is than both James Cook or Damian Harris. Harris might start the season as a number 2, but I wouldn't be surprised if Murray starts to get more and more involved in that role. The two receivers that I mentioned, Kaiir and Hardy, I think they've both been soundly outplayed by Trent Sherfield in camp. Based on what I saw at practice Monday, we saw one of the biggest highlights at camp. Josh Allen hit Sherfield with a touchdown pass. He beat Teron Johnson by half step, made a terrific catch. I really like Trent Sherfield a lot, so maybe it's more that I like them than I don't like Kaiir or Hardy. Boogie Basham, I don't know. It just he had a couple good plays throughout the 4 days I've seen him, but he just seems like another guy that's out there. And then Spector, I thought he might be a low key in this mix to start at middle linebacker. More on that in a second. But he fell off pretty quick, and it's a 2-man race now. So he's one of those roster bubble guys.
But when you go through that whole list, right? I mean, with the exception of McGovern, you're talking about all backups and depth,
well,
right?
So, but yeah.
But I mean, even Kaiir, I look at it. And I know from what you're saying, like, hey, don't be surprised if he's the guy out there. Okay, I believe you when you say that. But it's also a little bit of just like, listen, if Kaiir pops or Hardy or Justin Shorter or Sherfield or Andy Isabella, I don't care who it is. I just need one of them to pop because Diggs is playing 80% of the snaps and so is Gabe Davis, right? And you want the depth, you want the investments to work. But to me, it's a little bit of just like, all right, Sherfield is shining. If Khalil Shakir is not, no big deal. And I'm not like, there's some fans that like have put Khalil Shakir up on this pedestal, and I do not understand why. Like the guy was a 5th round pick for a reason, even complaining about last year's offense. Like, well, if Khalil Shakir, it's like, I don't think more playing time for Khalil Shakir was the answer to the struggles that the Bills had last season.
Agreed.
Call me crazy, but it just,
no, you're right.
And I hope he's going to be a good player, but I'm not over the moon with my expectations for him.
I'll tell you, he's an enigma to me. Watching him play anyway. I mean, he looks really good. He runs crisp routes. He makes nice catches. And then at times he just doesn't, I don't know. It's hard to explain. He doesn't look like a starter to me at times. He's not a very good blocker. You're a guy over at Buffalo Rumblings. Joe Miller is not a fan. One of the biggest, I don't want to say fights, bickering that we had last Monday, not this Monday, last Monday. It was me, Joe Marino, and Joe Miller. Joe Miller is not team Khalil Shakir at all. Marino's higher on him, not as high as some. But anyway, I agree. And not to get off track, because you mentioned one guy. I'll be remiss if I didn't say this. I said nobody has kind of surprised me at camp. You kind of reminded me that somebody actually has. Isabella. I wouldn't be surprised if he has a really good preseason, and because he's not some undrafted rookie. I mean, he was a good prospect coming out of school.
Yeah.
he can force his way into this mix here at wide receiver with a good preseason. This preseason is going to be big for him. He looks, first of all, he's fast. He run good. He run good route. He runs good routes. He's behind Hardy right now on kick returns. They're kind of down to 2 there. He's a guy that I would look out for in this preseason. Anyway, all right, so let's move on. Another one I got, number 4, middle linebacker play. Look, this is no surprise. I didn't need to go to camp and watch this to tell you this. I could have told you this in after Tremaine Edmonds signed with the Bears and the Bills didn't do anything in middle linebacker. The middle linebacker play, you can see the drop off. And
Yeah.
how you feel about Tremaine Edmonds, not you, but just fans generally speaking, it's polarizing. Some people love them. Some people think he was overrated. One thing that I can tell you with certainty, he's significantly better than Tyrell Dodson or Terrell Bernard. And one of those 2 guys are going to be the starting middle linebacker. I'm not saying the Bills can't overcome that position. They certainly can with some schemes and, these guys could step up a little bit. But anyway, my point is you really see firsthand the lower ceiling at middle linebacker play with these 2 guys and what they had in Tremaine Edmonds. And you got to take a loss somewhere on your roster. This is clearly that position.
Yeah, and this one, it's so interesting, right? Because you even start to talk about middle linebackers some ways in the way that folks do about running backs, right? Like, they're replaceable. It's not that valuable of a position. You don't want to overpay for it, this and that. But then again, right, you think of the time that we spent talking about draft prospects, right? Whether it was like the Campbell kid from Iowa, right? Of just like, oh, well, are the Bills just going to invest in someone like this and have him come in and be that replacement? And they didn't. And it's just like, okay, Sean McDermott in his defense, we've seen how much he's put on his linebackers' plates in the past and not making that upgrade. I mean, it's just one of those pieces where you think, do we just have to live with it? Or is there something that we don't know? And once they're out there, the Dotson will be fine and we'll just kind of roll with it. And it'll be one of those off-season storylines we spend so much time talking about that doesn't really matter. I hope that's the case, but too early to tell.
It's too early to officially declare who's going to be the starter too. I got a really strong gut that says ultimately it's going to be Dodson who gets the start. I've not been very impressed with Bernard, who, by the way, I might have said this on the show last week. I can't even remember at this point. He looks smaller. I know he was the smallest guy, but I mean, in person and out there, he looks smaller. Like Taylor, he's no bigger than Taylor Rapp. Like legit. Yeah, dude. It's just a weird off season when it comes to the position because it's not even like the Bills, as far as we know, they didn't even like go out and try to really sign anybody at middle linebacker. And I mean, it's not like the front office is sitting there forgetting about the position. It was a concerted thing, obviously. So I don't know. Obviously, maybe they know something that we don't. I don't know. Just watching practice for 4 days, I haven't seen any of these guys really do much of anything at middle linebacker. So there's going to be a drop off there. Just hopefully other position, the line is better up front, the secondary is better, and then maybe that makes the linebacking play, or at least middle linebacker, I should say, more adequate. One more, and then we'll get to a break. I hate talking about the guy because he's only in year 2, and it's just unfair to put a bust label on somebody this early. But I'd also be lying to you if I didn't sit here and say that it's concerning to me that Kaiir Elam has not taken that step. He is probably the most, of all the talented players on this roster, he's probably the most up and down guy that I've seen at practice, man. One day, he looks up and down, makes good play, and then he gets beat bad. Got called for holding, would have been 2 holding plays on one drive. Just looks a little bit lost at times. Then I go to practice. The practice that on last Monday that Marino and I were at, he looked fantastic, man. He had a great couple reps against Stephon Diggs. He pulled Austin, one of the reserve DBs who was going to go one-on-one with Diggs. He pulled him off. He wanted a piece of him. They're jawing at each other. He's made some really good plays. And then at times he just falls off. I said on the show a couple days ago, using the old Roddy Piper quote, just when you think you have the answers, I change the questions. Well, I thought Elam was right there with Dane Jackson. And then bam, Christian Bedford plays way better than him at camp, and he's getting reps now alongside Dane Jackson. My prevailing thought when it comes to Elam is this: is he fully developed? Is he the best player that he's ever going to be right now? Probably not. But you draft a guy, Anthony, in the first round. He's in year two. And if he's not head and shoulders above Dane Jackson, to me, that's a problem. And he's not. Dane Jackson is very likely going to start. And at this point, right now, today, as we talk, I think Christian Benford has surpassed Elam on the depth chart for a second straight training camp, by the way. It's concerning to me.
It is, God, you know how much time I've spent talking about this, thinking about this. I've been frustrated by it. Then there's the part of me that's just like, listen, if Christian Benford is playing great in camp, good for him, right? That's not
Three
necessarily
picks
an
in the last 2
indictment.
days.
That's not an indictment of Kaiir Elam or Dane Jackson or even the front office. If anything, it's like, it's kudos to the front office. If Christian Benford has truly the skill set to be a starting cornerback in the NFL as a 6th-round draft pick out of Division I AA Villanova. I know they don't call it 1AA anymore.
Right.
So there's that piece, right? I still will contend. I am guessing that Dane Jackson and Kaiir Elam will have some sort of a rotation at cornerback 2 this season. I know it probably will drive many folks crazy, but depending on the matchup, right? If it's something where there's more speed on the other team, you've got to play more man, you're going to see more Kaiir Elam. If it's going to be more zone coverage and, not that type of speed on the outside, all right, then you're going to see more of Dane Jackson.
Joe alluded to that as well, and I agree. And it is a good point. These battles that we talk about, a linebacker and corner, they might not be a Dotson beat out Bernard and the competition's over, or Dane Jackson's a starter and the competition's over. This could be a week to week, who the opponent is, what the matchup is, scheme based, who gets in that lineup that week. If the Bills are playing a team that's going to want to run the ball, Dotson's going to be in there more. If they're playing a team that's going to throw it a lot more, Bernard might be in there that week. So there's validity to that.
Well, and here's some of it too, right? So you going back to middle linebacker, you look at basically 3 unproven commodities in that competition, right? Like we're hoping that Balen Spector might pop, or Terrell Bernard, who we thought was overdrafted to begin with, or Terrell Dotson, who's been a reserve on the team for the last 5 seasons or whatever it's been. There's no one proven there that we're looking at and saying we want to emerge. And by all accounts, no one has separated themselves really from the pack yet as you look at this. With cornerback 2, it's different. And yes, we want to see Elam be the next Tre'Davious White or whatever, really establish himself. But these are 3 guys that we have seen in NFL football games perform at a high level. Now, Dane Jackson is a little different, right? There's probably some folks listening right now saying the soft coverage with him playing off, just the like, hey, we'll let you catch the 7-yard pass and then we're going to wrap you up. That was by design. That's what the team was looking to do. So, it's a little bit with this. I guess what I'm trying to say is these are 3 guys that we've seen perform before in some way, shape, or form. So I'm a little bit trying to like talk myself off the ledge with it because it's not just this, well, they're all completely unproven and no one's establishing themselves and they just keep rotating them around.
I have to say, back to Elam, being at camp, the 4 practices I've seen, I think it's a comfort level they have with Dane Jackson. And that's why I think he's ultimately going to be the starter. Because I got to be honest with you, Dane Jackson's not popping. There's probably not a practice that goes by where he doesn't give up a big play or 2. Now, in fairness, in practice, where the quarterback can't get touched, he's not getting rushed, he knows he's not going to get hit. That's in his mind. He's not. So you got to cover guys longer. It's harder on a DB at camp. I'm not seeing anything from Dane Jackson special other than the fact that I just think that Sean McDermott trusts him more. I don't know what it is about Elam. And again, it's too early to write somebody off, but you have to be somewhat alarmed that he's in year 2, that he's just not playing head and shoulder. I keep going back to it. He should be way better than Dane Jackson, and he's not. That concerns me, man. Benford playing well, a 6th-round pick. It happens. That's good. By the way, that's good for a Bills fan.
Yeah.
You got a guy out there who's playing well. I don't know, man. I feel like if the Bills, they got a preseason game on Saturday. Let's pretend they're opening the season against the Colts right now. I think Kaiir Elam is your 4th corner, which may not even get you dressed. He might be a healthy, inactive scratch if week 1 were this week. That concerns me. I don't like that.
Good God, man. I hope you are wrong.
I do
You know what I
too.
mean? Just from a like, and I know what you're saying. It's yeah, we'll just have to wait and see. And honestly, it's like Benford seemed like he was kind of out of the race until the past 2 days. And then all of a sudden he's getting the first team reps. And when they did it, whatever, it must have been on Sunday, and it was like, oh, he had a good day. Well, there were no pads, this and that. You're thinking to yourself, okay, well, maybe is it a good day, but it's a little bit of a lighter practice. But then he comes out on Monday. So it's just, I don't know. I'm trying to, in my rose-colored glasses, look at this as a good problem to have, and it kind of going back to the Kyle Williams, John McCargo example, which, like, thank God that was all happening before the days of Twitter, or like, you think of like just the venom and vitriol that would have been there. But if, yeah, we'll just wait and see, man.
All right, I'm back with Anthony Marino from Buffalo Rumblings, who desperately wants Kaiir Elam to become a good NFL quarterback. That is pretty obvious right now. All right, I got two more. And let me preface this too. Hopefully, these two end up meaning very little in the regular season. Okay. Number one, well, number two on my list, the first one, I should say, the offensive line depth as a whole is pretty good. Like, I think the interior depth is really good, which, by the way, again, we're talking about concerns, and I pointed out what a good camp Sherfield's having. I also want to say I like what I've seen from David Edwards too, the free agent signing from the Rams. I think he's going to be good depth on the inside. But anyway, the offensive tackle depth, dude, alarming is an understatement. Okay, so you got Deion Dawkins and you got Spencer Brown, and we all know the questions about Spencer Brown about being fully healthy for this year, and just what happens if he's doesn't play well for whatever reason. The Bills, probably to me, the most under the radar thing that made me concerned about this team throughout the entire offseason wasn't middle linebacker. It was that I feel like they didn't do enough to address offensive tackle behind Spencer Brown, who's still a little bit of a risk. Anyway, from what I've seen in camp, David Quisenberry, who exclusively is playing left tackle in camp, by the way, behind Dawkins, and then Brandon Shell, who they signed over from Miami, is playing behind Spencer Brown. Both these guys, terrible. They have looked brutal. Brutal. If this was an article instead of a podcast, brutal would be in all caps. They have looked terrible. And Tommy Doyle, I don't know if he's just not all the way back healthy, whatever. I was hoping to see more from him. Not seeing it at this point anyway. The offensive tackle depth right now, or Anthony, it's brutal, man. Bad.
It is tough too, because you think of just the state of offensive tackle in the NFL. I mean, David Quessenberry and Brandon Shell are guys that have started a lot of games in the league, right? So this is not something where you're just looking and saying, oh, it's a 6th-round rookie that we're trying to coach up, or an undrafted free agent. I mean, here are guys that, again, have each started, I think, over 60 games in their respective time with the Titans and with the Dolphins. I mean, it's kind of an indictment, I think, to the position in itself. Like, yeah, maybe we would have liked them to make more of an investment, but at what expense? I mean, something in the draft, maybe, like, but was there somebody there that you're going to get in the 3rd round that really could provide some depth that you would feel good about? Or would it just be, again, 3rd, 4th, 5th round tackles? They're raw for a reason. So you look at it, you hope it's something that never even comes up in conversation. I mean, heck, we saw Bobby Hart play meaningful snaps last year for the Buffalo Bills. You have a quarterback in Josh Allen, sometimes holds on to the ball a little bit more than you would like. With this, you'd like to see some more of those like quick strikes, and maybe Dalton Kincaid helps get you some of that it becomes a little bit more of a moot point than it needs to be. But right now, it's just like, listen, Deion Dawkins, kind of day to day right now with an injury doesn't seem to be too big of a deal.
Yeah,
at least according to, I think it was Matt Marino said last night that Spencer Brown had one of his best days of camp on Monday. So you look at those things and it's just like, listen, as long as these two are okay, and then if it comes something where they end up missing some time, well, maybe Dawson Knox is doing some more blocking than you need to, or you do some more of those jumbo packages where you have another offensive tackle on the field like Bobby Hart was last year. You hope that's not the case, but just like for now, let's just make sure that those two guys are good to go.
I think it's underrated. People underrate how important Spencer Brown's going to be to this team this year.
Yeah.
How he plays, staying on the field first and foremost, and how he plays is going to be huge when it comes to the Buffalo Bills and how successful that offense ultimately looks. By the way, I've from what I've seen, and again, I don't focus on the offensive line all that much, although we're spending a lot of time talking about them today. I like what I've seen from Spencer Brown at camp. I think he's looked pretty good. Maybe Brandon Shell could potentially get the job done short term. I'm all out on Quisenberry. You know, this might be a position where where Brandon Beane pays a lot of attention to the waiver wire come NFL cutdown day. I just don't like it. I don't like the offensive line depth. You could just see, even in drills, when the starters aren't in there and the backups are in, just how easily, Shane Ray has looked like Von Miller going against some of these backup offensive tackles. Seriously, in camp, and it's noticeable too. It's not good at that position. So hopefully it doesn't even end up mattering. You got two tackles who can stay healthy, which brings me to number one. All right, so I use the word brutal to describe the offensive tackle depth. He's a nice guy. I don't like talking mean about nice people. By all accounts, Kaiir Elam is a really good dude. He's Josh's boy. I get to an extent why they signed him to an extent, but I got to tell you, man, Anthony, Kaiir Elam and Matt Barkley. So I used brutal. I'll use this word to describe Kaiir Elam and Matt Barkley, what I've seen from them at camp. Ready? Garbage. Absolute garbage. I've been going to camp for a long time. Some years I see more camp practices than others. And these guys, mind you, are mostly in shorts and t-shirts throwing the football. I don't think I've ever seen worse quarterback play in my camp viewing career than I've seen from Kaiir Elam. Now I wasn't there, but I did read he had a couple nice plays at practice on Monday. But I'm telling you, man, I've watched this dude 4 times. And sometimes, so they wear red jerseys, okay? And you're trying to watch 5 different things at once at camp because it's a long field. They got a lot of shit going on at once. And you don't even have to look at the quarterback who's throwing the football. Like, just watch the football. You could tell when Josh is throwing a football. You could see the velocity on the ball. The other two it's not in the same stratosphere, and the accuracy is just not there. Kaiir Elam threw 2 of the ugliest interceptions I've ever seen at practice a couple days ago. It is hard to watch the offense for the most part. Not even 11 on 11 or 7 on 7. I'm talking about just throwing drills to the wide receivers, 15-yard outs and stuff like that. If you can't look good in t-shirt and shorts, you're going to have some problems. This is, dear God, Josh Allen, stay healthy. I mean, to be fair, you can say the same thing about Mahomes and all the other great quarterbacks too if they go down. So it's nothing unique going on here in Buffalo. Dude, it's bad. Quarterback play behind Josh in this camp, maybe the worst I've seen. You don't like that?
Here's what I'm going to, and listen, now one, I wasn't there, right? So I didn't see it. You might be like, Anthony, if you were there, you would be cringing. I'm old enough to remember people overreacting to Case Keenum and what he was last year, Mitchell Trubisky the year before, and so on and so forth. And it's like, these guys are backups for a reason, right? If Josh Allen goes down, the Bills are screwed. I don't care who else the backup quarterback would be, unless if Ryan Fitzpatrick came out of retirement, right? Like, other than that, there is no one that I look at across the NFL and say, oh man, I wish they made an investment in Teddy Bridgewater, right? Or like the money that would have cost for where the team is in a Super Bowl window. And I get it. It's just, you got to just make the playoffs. But I am not planning the season on if Josh Allen gets hurt. I just feel like that is a scenario.
Of course.
So it's a little bit of, look at how far we've come. If your biggest concern 2 weeks into training camp is that the backup quarterback sucks.
Agreed.
I'm good with that, man. I remember freaking, charting and looking at Joe Buscaglia's breakdown of like, oh, what Jeff Toole was 17 for 23 in practice today. Like, I remember those days of just like hoping that Thad Lewis would pop and be yeah, I'm okay with where things are right now. Do I wish he looked better? Of course I do, right? Like that goes without being said, but Josh Allen goes down, the Bills are screwed anyway. So Kyle Allen, Matt Barkley, whoever, bring back Case Keenum. It's not gonna make a big difference.
It's funny you say Case Keenum. I want to throw a tweet up real quick. I put this out yesterday. I don't think people really liked it much, but I said, I'm wondering if Case Keenum ends up back with the Bills. It's possible. The Texans have Stroud and Davis Mills, may not keep 3 quarterbacks on their active roster. Keenum can want to choose to come back to Buffalo and be the quarterback 2 rather than the practice squad in Houston. More money for him and potentially, a better opportunity. Look, I'm not a Case Keenum guy. I agree with you. I remember last year as well. But I'm telling you this, he looks significantly better than I've seen Kyle Allen look. I'm just throwing it out there. You're right. If he goes down, the ship sinks. I completely get that. I just, and that's if it's a major injury, dude. I just don't have any faith whatsoever right now in these quarterbacks. Even if, say, Josh has to miss 2 games for whatever reason, you're right, by the way. We're at a point now where backup quarterback's your biggest concern on a team. That's a good thing. I tweeted out something. Anquan Bolden, in fact, as we tape this, he signed with the Bills. His first practice was 6 years ago. This is how far the Bills have come in 6 years. There's a photo, and I put it up on Twitter. The most miserable look on his face ever. And he retired literally less than 2 weeks after his first practice with the Bills. So this team's come a long way. And I do agree. The fact that we're talking backup quarterback right now is a good thing. I'm just saying, dude, Kyle Allen's it's ugly. It's ugly. Yeah, I wish you would see this with your own eyes, because maybe you would have a little more conviction in your takes right now.
So let me ask you a question though. Is there a part of this that is because, like, listen, you're out there and you're watching Josh Allen.
Mhm.
I mean, who has a howitzer for an arm. I mean, everything he does is amazing, right? At least when it comes to the physical talents of a quarterback in the NFL. You can argue he is the most naturally, physically gifted QB in football.
Mm-hmm.
Whoever you put after him, it's obviously not going to look good. And I know we're talking about accuracy in different pieces, but you're talking about velocity in different pieces. I mean, are Barkley and Kyle Allen just like, yeah, that's what a backup quarterback's arm looks like. If it, I don't know. I'm just trying to make you feel better, I think, and I'm doing a crap job.
No. Yeah, you are right. Look, anyone compared to Josh, well, not anyone, but most compared to Josh are going to pale badly in comparison. And I kind of, I put that into my equation. I just do the second team offense out. It's not even the full padded 11 on 11. It's just the throws during drills, and not even the velocity, the velocity, the accuracy as well. Anyway, we're spending far too time talking about a backup quarterback, and hopefully it doesn't come down to it. By the way, Josh Allen, the NFL top 100 players list, that came in the top 10. He came in at number 8. So that's pretty cool, man, to have a top 10 guy. I don't have it in front of me who the top 7 were. I don't have all of them anyway. I know Jalen Hurts was ranked above him. And I'm not the kind of guy who bitches about stuff like this much, but I don't think Jalen Hurts should be put up above him based on just one season. But anyway, you got a top 10 player in the entire NFL. So if anyone out there is like, the Bills Super Bowl windows closed, no, it's not. No, and by the way, Stephon Diggs was 16. So they had 2 of the top 20 in that. I gotta say, Joe DiBiase from WGR had the hater tweet of the week. I don't know if you saw it. So Josh is number 8. The top 2 players. I don't know who's 1 or 2. I think it's Mahomes. Mahomes is 1, and Justin Jefferson is 2. I know they're the top 2. I'm not quite sure which order. Joe DiBiase, of course, had to point out that number 1 and 2 in the entire NFL, the Bills traded away draft rights to both of them. They traded away the ability to draft Mahomes when they could have had him, and they traded for Diggs. Again, it's a hater tweet. I admit it. Kind of funny.
But you know what? I mean, let's be honest, though. I think all Bills fans are at this point. I don't look back at anything and think, if the Bills drafted Patrick Mahomes at that time, I don't know. I mean, it's like the combination of him with Andy Reid has worked. And good for him and good for the Chiefs and for their fans. I would not trade Josh Allen for Patrick Mahomes today. I would not. And you know what? As great as Justin Jefferson is with what he's doing in Minnesota, I could not be happier with Stephon Diggs. Like, yeah, a few years ago, it would be a little bit more of like, well, hey, if you had Patrick Mahomes instead of Josh Allen and Tre'Davious White or this, to me, that conversation is done. So listen, I get Joe putting it out there, but
It's a hater tweet.
it's not a, I don't think there's anyone in Bills Mafia that would trade Josh Allen for Patrick Mahomes today, nor, Joe Burrow or any other quarterback in football.
It was a hater tweet. Just thought it was kind of funny. I'll tell you, I've been saying it for 2 years. If I'm the Bills, I wouldn't trade Josh Allen for Mahomes. If I'm the Chiefs, I'm certainly not trading Mahomes for Josh Allen either.
Yeah.
So it kind of goes both ways. I don't know. I'm happy with Josh. Let's just leave it there. And plus, if the Bills don't trade for Diggs, who says they draft Jefferson? Maybe they draft Jalen Reagor and he turns out to be a bust. And if they take Mahomes in 2017, they don't have who's the coach, who's around him, what support system does he have around him, who are the receivers? He ain't got no Travis Kelce in Buffalo either. You know what I mean? So
Sure.
who knows? He would have been a great player, but who knows anyway? It was just a fun hater tweet from him. Couple minutes, then we're going to get going with our finish the sentence segment to end the show. So I'm talking about things that concern me. I wanted to bring up one or two things too that I'm really enjoying. I've talked about Gabe Davis. We did a whole show last week saying Gabe Davis dominating camp. He looks really good. And I've been to 2 practices since our show last week. Continues to look good, consistently good. Dalton Kincaid, I think, is looking smooth, effortlessly. He looks good. I didn't see it on Monday, but from all accounts, he made like the best catch of the entire training camp. I think he's going to be a day one impact guy. We throw a name at you that also has been really impressive. Not talked about quite as much because you talk about the pass catchers and Josh. James Cook looks really good. And I haven't really talked about him much. He looks explosive. He's got that Le'Veon Bell kind of patience and then that acceleration. He's catching the ball out of the backfield. He looks really good running routes. The guy that we hoped we'd see out of Georgia 2 years or last year, he's looked at in camp. And there's no running back by committee. And I know some people are going to sit here and say that. It's going to be a lot of Cook or a little bit of Cook and a little bit of Harris and a little bit of Murray. No, it's not. James Cook is going to be your feature guy. Like if you play fantasy football out there, draft this dude early. I'm telling you, I think he's going to have a big season. He looks really, really good at camp this year.
Well, I just my latest show just came out earlier this morning, and I honestly said, like, I'm driving the hype train for the 3 guys you just mentioned: Gabriel Davis, Dalton Kincaid, and James Cook.
Yeah.
And when it comes to Cook, in some ways, it's just like, listen, just give him the ball. And I don't say that meaning like become run heavy or this and that. I don't care if it's a dump off pass or him lining up at receiver or whatever it is. But when he gets the ball in his hands, and I think the Lev Bell comparison is a great one, right? He's got some patience and then he goes. And once he takes off, something good always seems to happen when he's got the ball. So we have seen enough of a rotation at running back, whether it's, not since LaShawn McCoy left, but then it's, you got Singletary and Frank Gore, and then you've got Singletary and Zach Moss, and you add in Nyheim Hines to the mix, and then you add James Cook to the mix, and you've got, just this rotation where you're not really committing to someone, but along the same lines where you're not really giving them enough touches. And I think with Cook now, and maybe the injury to Hines is a little bit of a blessing in disguise of just like, there's no one to compete with him in that sense and what he can do. So let's see him get after it. And I'm excited to see him be that lead back for the Bills. And Damian Harris will be sprinkled in, or Latavius Murray, and those guys will bring something different. But for what this offense needs, I hope he's getting somewhere around 15 touches a game between the rush and the pass.
He will. I think he'll play more snaps this year than Devin Singletary did the last couple of years. I just like him a lot. And I'll tell you, man, to summarize the offense, if the offensive line can stay healthy, and if Spencer Brown looks good, and if Connor McGovern looks good, it's endless.
Sure.
Stephon Diggs is Stephon Diggs. And I'm telling you, Gabe Davis, I can't emphasize enough how good he looks. He's going to have a good year. I love Kincaid. We just sleep on Dawson Knox. It's like we don't even talk about Dawson Knox anymore.
I know.
He's a way above average tight end, and I really love James Cook. This offense looks really, really good to me at camp. And defensively, the one player I want to talk about on defense, we spent so much time. When is Vaughn getting back? Or we're talking about the middle linebacker competition, and we're talking about the cornerback competition. One guy who I think is quietly looks amazing in camp, winning all of his drills, creating havoc out there. He's going in the year 3. Gregory Rizzo. I think this guy is had a fantastic camp. He would be your unsung hero, maybe, if that's the right award I'd come up with for training camp right now, because he's just consistently looking like a stud out there. And you got Vaughn Miller coming back, and you got Leonard Floyd. So he's gonna be fresher, and he's not gonna get double teamed because of those other 2 guys too, and Ed Oliver. Dude, it would not surprise me if he had the high ankle sprain last year. I could see Rizzo having 12 sacks this year.
No, and it would be great. I mean, you talk about him, he's got the right character, he's got the right personality, but then you just look at his sheer size out there.
Mhm.
I mean, it's 6'7", the long arms, he's getting bigger, he is dynamic, and and even he said in his press availability earlier in the week, like talking about, hey, sometimes you have a good game and you don't get any sacks, and sometimes you don't play so well and you luck into some. Like, but that's okay, right? Like, this is a guy that is active. He's got a high motor. He doesn't give up on the play. And when that happens, sometimes you might luck into some of those sacks because you just keep going. Good for him, man. And to see that consistency going into year 3, that's what you hope to get with a first-round pick. But for him to be drafted that late and to be showing that consistency, even, piggybacking off of last year, he's going to be a good one.
There it goes. So I turned 5 biggest Bills concerns into we're about to see breakout seasons from James Cook and Gregory Rizzo. There, we did it. I'm the hero. All right, let's finish with our finish the sentence segment. We do this every week. I'm going to throw out 4 blanket statements, and you're simply going to finish the sentence. It's an opportunity for fans who are watching and listening just to know a little bit more about the 2 of us. Let's get this going here. All right, the first sports jersey I can remember owning was blank.
James Lofton. And it was a Christmas gift from my parents. I'm trying to think, like, before that, when I was younger, like, jerseys wasn't really a thing. I can't think of something before then that I would have had. So,
Right.
like you said, the first one I can remember owning, Buffalo Bills, number 80, James Lofton. That first jersey I had, a Christmas gift from my folks.
Are you a jersey guy? Like, do you wear jerseys often?
No, I don't. And it's one of those things that you even said, like, you've got some and they sit in a drawer, but, from my Paul Posluszny jersey to my Marcel Darius to, others that just end up in the, at the bottom of a drawer because the guys, flamed out or got traded. I'm not a big jersey guy anymore.
Me neither. Me neither at all. I was going to say, I'm going to preface this by saying I've probably only had about 3 or 4 Bills or just jerseys in my life. I'm not a jersey guy, and I never have been. Mine was Thurman Thomas, so I do remember having a Thurman Thomas jersey, and I'm talking about while he was playing too, not a legend of the game afterwards. I had a Thurman Thomas jersey. Besides that, though, I know I had an Eric Moles jersey. I had a Derek Jeter Yankees jersey at one time, and then I have a Josh Allen jersey, and I didn't buy the Josh Allen jersey. My daughter gave it to me a couple years ago as a Christmas gift. Yeah, I'm not a jersey guy. They look really good on other people but for whatever reason, I just always hated the way they looked on me. But
so let me say this. And I don't know if you used to do this, but we used to have a Champion outlet not far from where I grew up in Rochester. And I would go there, and this is at the time before anything was Nike or, jerseys were a big deal. And they would just have either a bin of sweatshirts or sometimes jerseys. And I remember digging through and finding like a perfect Champion Steve McNair jersey that I bought for $3. And I would just have that. I would wear it at college. And it was just like, you're in upstate New York. How many Air McNair jerseys do you see on campus? But that one was a go-to for me. So not my first jersey I had, but kind of one of those more random ones that you would pull out and everybody would know it was me.
You talked about how you get some jerseys and they always end up at the bottom of your drawer because the player fizzles out or gets traded or cut or whatever. I like going to practices or games and seeing kind of obscure jerseys. Shout out to a guy I seen at practice the other day with his Van Roden jersey on. That was pretty cool. I'm figuring, assuming he's related to the guy or something. But anyway, all right. A movie everyone's seen but me is blank.
Titanic.
Really? You never seen Titanic?
Never seen it. Never will. Too long, too whatever. Like, I have no need. I remember like the whole craze when like the entire world was going to see it. and I thought about it once, and then it was just like, and I was a single guy at the time. I'm like, what am I going with my buddies to watch Titanic? Like that doesn't seem like something that we would do. So I've never seen Titanic.
All right. I did see it at the time, my girlfriend at the movie or at the drive-in, actually, we seen it together. Your inclination was right because the shit was whack. It was a stupid movie. I absolutely hated it. Mine is, well, I got two. Any Star Wars movie other than the original. I've never seen The Empire Strikes Back. I've never seen any of the Star Wars movies except the original at the movie theater. I think I was like 5 years old. My mother took me. I don't remember the movie, but I remember going to the movies to see it. Probably the first movie I've ever seen in my life, actually, in a theater. And then the other one is Saving Private Ryan, and it's not because I don't think it's would be a great movie. I don't know what it is, Anthony. For whatever reason, I don't like watching war movies. I don't like watching movies about war. I don't know why. Maybe I grew up as a kid horrified that I was going to join the military, get drafted in the military, and be in a war. I'm soft. Shout out to everyone, all you heroes out there who do serve. I'm not that guy. I'm soft. I'm a sissy. I want nothing to do with it. So anyway, I don't like watching war movies. So I've never seen Saving Private Ryan. You
I
seen
never
that
saw
one?
Saving Private Ryan either. And I always thought with that one, it just, sometimes there's movies that you just know are going to be really emotional.
Yeah,
And,
yeah,
and you go through with that. And usually I go to the movies to escape, and sometimes like, yeah, you'll be watching something and there will probably be something that pulls at the heartstrings or whatever type of
sure.
piece. But with things like that, it's just like, I don't know if I have, when you think of that level of heartbreak to just be able to invest yourself in something and come away from
Yeah.
just having that feeling inside. So I never saw that one either. If it makes you feel better, the
Well,
Star Wars stuff, that's going to be another conversation, I think, for another day, because I don't know how you could grow up in the '80s or whenever and not be a part of that culture. But that's
just wasn't.
another topic.
This category should have been called the movie everyone's seen except me and Anthony. And then we could have said Saving Private Ryan. It took everything I had to be able to go see American Sniper, which is kind of along those same lines. I did see that, and it was good too. Anyway, all right, two more here. A TV show, past or present, I think is very underrated. Is blank.
Community. Community,
Good,
which was
good
on
one.
NBC
Yeah.
with Joel McHale, Chevy Chase, Donald Glover, Danny Pudi. To me, when that show first came out on NBC, I fell in love with it from the first episode. And I remember seeing the commercials and just being like, this looks hysterical. And it was. And even still rewatching the show today during the pandemic, started watching it with the kids, and they fell in love with it too. It's a show that still holds up. Every year it was on the chopping block. Like, is NBC going to cancel
Mm-hmm.
Community? Fans would have to, get into everything. I mean, still the hashtag 6 seasons in a movie became a rallying cry of the cast. And now the writer's strike has put a little kink in the plan, but it is still going to be moving forward that they will do a Community movie, which will be on Peacock. But for me, I absolutely love that show. We talked before. I know you're a huge fan of The Office. You think of the affinity that people have to shows like that and Parks and Rec, and that's totally fine, and I get it. But compared to those, Community, to me, was such a better show, and just the character arcs and everything with it. Still love it to this day.
It's a great pick, and you want to talk about underrated? I never even thought of that. That's a really good pick. I agree with everything you said. That was a great show. Mine is Newsroom on HBO. It only went 3 seasons, man. That was such good storytelling about the media. Everyone talks about Succession and this conglomerate media series, drama series. Newsroom was awesome and only lasted for 3 seasons. Jeff Daniels, who's usually played this, comedy, goofy type characters. Most people know him from Dumb and Dumber. He was brilliant in this. So that was one. And then another one, and I'm pretty sure you like this too. Schitt's Creek. Now I know it's popular, so it's not like completely under the radar, but this show should get a lot more love than it does. People are like, it's a nice show, it's a cute show. This show to me was up there among the best. It's just a feel good, tender show that's funny. And you got David who played, he's a gay character. And one of my favorite things about this show is nobody gave a shit in the town. And Schitt's Creek, it wasn't even like, a lot of shows where there's gay characters and they have to overcome hate from groups and stuff like that. None of that on this show. Nobody in that town even gave a shit. It didn't even matter. And I love that about that show. It's one of those all-time feel-good shows for me. And if people haven't watched that, I'm telling you, man, you're missing out. Go and watch that, including you.
I haven't watched it. Remember
Dude,
one of our first episodes? That was the
that's
show
right. That's I remember
that I have not watched yet. And my
Changed
wife and
it.
I, we were talking about it the other day. We
Change
finished up the latest season of Jack Ryan last night, which I cannot say enough great things about. John Krasinski just absolutely kills it in that role. But Schitt's Creek, it's on the list. I promise you for us to start.
You got to watch it. I'm telling you, it's really worth it. All right, last one here. The dumbest fad you remember participating in was blank.
God, and again, like you try to think to these things, like what did we call it back in the day? Did they call it like white walls with your hair, where you would you'd sort of like shave this part right here on each side and maybe throw like a line or two in. But I participated in it, but I didn't like fully commit to the bit. You know, it was a little bit like, just do it like this high, just a little bit. And it was sort of there. And it was just, it was one of those pieces that everyone, like, that was the fad. And when you were growing up, and just a bad 80s haircut to begin with, and just made it even worse. So
I swear to you, good people out there watching and listening to this, I didn't know Anthony's answers and he doesn't know mine. Same thing. Same exact thing. It was the buzz cut, fade, which isn't all that sort of different than what you see now. But yeah, but here's what we did, and I'll add a layer to it. So I played football, Lafayette High School, senior year, and the fad was the players would take the side of their, the buzz hair, and they would shave something in, like you said, a line. Well,
yeah,
we would write our football number on our side of our head. It's so corny and stupid and whack now thinking about it. At the time, we thought it was cool though. And I had, I think I had number 85. It was my junior year, not my senior year, because I remember it was 85. I wore 85 my junior year. 3 was my senior year. 85 was shaved into my head and it was uneven. Like I had one of my friends do it and it looked so freaking terrible that I ended up having to completely shave with a razor the side of my hair. So I had my hair here, but not here. But yeah, that was the worst fad ever. Football players writing their numbers on the side of their buzzed head.
I hope you have a picture of that someplace that you can pull out for a future episode.
I don't, because if I did, trust me when I tell you, man, I would completely call myself out. That is hilarious. I can't believe you pretty much said the same thing that I did. Good stuff. All right, we're going to get out of here. That's going to do it for this episode. Make sure you follow Anthony on Twitter at Marino. Check out the Buffalo Rumblings podcast, Vidcast Network. Check out his show specifically, Breaking Buffalo Rumblings. I'm going to be hanging out with a couple of your Rumblings people over this weekend. Joe Miller, John Fina is going to be back in town. Sarah Larson, we're spending some time with her as well. Looking forward to that. Thanks for doing the show, buddy.
Awesome. Always a pleasure.
All right, guys, I'll be back. You know what? I was going to say on Friday for sure, but I'm not even sure. But I will be back with a new episode soon enough. So stick around. Take care.